Well, folks, ending a good day. We came up here to the Allentown area and the greater area to make sure what Bobby and I, Senator and I were doing along with the governor is making some sense and affecting people's attitudes. I've said before that, starting a new business is an act of hope. And a lot of people came out of the last several years, the previous several years, kind of down. I was talking with the owners of the coffee shop, and you saw me taking them around. And I said, I think we underestimate the impact that the failure to respond to the COVID crisis quickly enough had on the psyche of the American people. And they surprised me. They said, well, I know it did with us. You had over 1 million people dying, and we had trouble at the front end of realizing there wasn't much done to deal with it. We ramped up rapidly, vaccinations and the like, and that generated a comment from our host and hostess telling us that they had real troubles. The young woman who went to the college graduate, very impressive young woman, owns the coffee shop. She was talking about how she had suffered from post-traumatic stress and all the things that were happening around her and the loss of hope and faith she had. And then the husband, started talking about how he suffered from depression. But when they started to see what was happening, that we were actually investing in the community. You guys know people who've had post-traumatic stress in the military and firefighters and like, and how they began to gain some hope. They talked about how the increase in the Obamacare being available to them and the $800 extra dollars, how it made a difference in their lives and getting the help they needed from the hospitals that they were dealing with. And they just went on and on about how what happened is once they were able to fund the business, and they got help to do that as well through you and others, that they started to gain faith in what was going on. And then talking to a lot of the business owners here, you've heard me say it before, and I apologize for repeating it because you hear it all the time. But I got tired of sort of, Bobby, trickle-down economics, If the big guys do well, everybody does well. Well, that may have occurred, but I'm not a big fan, never have been, that I've always believed if the middle class does well, everybody does well. The wealthy do very well, and the poor have a ladder up. And so all of them talked about how the number of people coming into their coffee shop, the number of people coming in the bike shop, the number of people coming in the running store, how the demography started changing. People started to be more engaged. And there's a real genuine sense of optimism. And they talked about childcare and how originally when we had passed the legislation that for the childcare tax credit, how that altered their life and ability to deal with their medical problems at the time because they had help being able to take care of their kids. And so what we've talked about is we're going to make sure that we're going to follow on. This is not the end of what we're doing. We're going to make sure that there is child care available. It helps everybody. It's not only not a impact on the taxpayer, it generates economic growth. Because when you can continue to work, if you have a child that needs help or needs to be taken care of, it generates economic growth. Everybody does better. And then they talked about, I'm talking to the guys here and other places about the money we got here from the SAFER Act, able to hire more cops, more firefighters, and where you have this training center. The idea that now you have a first-rate training center that goes all the way. I guess you got Binghamton, you got not Binghamton, excuse me. You got Scranton. You got what's happening all across up and down the state. In this area where we have the best trained firefighters in the world. And by the way, it matters. These guys risk their lives, not a joke. And it matters to know they know what they're doing. It matters to know when they're. So anyway, I just came away from this really reassured that what we've done has had an impact, not just here in eastern Pennsylvania but in the Northeast, but throughout the country. And we're going to do more. The job's not finished. Bobby, you want to say anything?
Mr. President, we're glad you're here today. We'll welcome the President back to Pennsylvania here in the Lehigh Valley, to be in the Allentown area, to be in Emmaus today, to meet with small business owners, and to talk about their real lives and their challenges. A lot of those challenges that they had during the early period of his first couple of years as president would have been much more challenging without the American Rescue Plan. Just think about it this way. We're in Lehigh County. This county alone had 70,000 families benefited by the child tax credit. And throughout our state, more than 80% of the families with children benefited from the child tax credit. So that helped for families, that helped us for small businesses that came from the American Rescue Plan, the investments here from infrastructure, whether it's roads or bridges or high-speed internet. So what we've got to continue to do together is to focus on those real challenges that families face, those small businesses face, get those costs down for families. You know, a lot of those costs in grocery stores are high because of one reason: corporate greed. That's what drove up those costs. The president's been trying to get those costs down. I have as well. One of the best ways to do that is to help those families directly and to go after companies that are jacking up their food prices, these big conglomerates, and then you go to your local grocery store and the costs are high. So the president's been working to get those costs down, as I have, and we'll continue that fight. I hope Republicans will join us in that effort to lower costs for families. But we're honored to be here with the firefighters and to once again affirm the valor that they demonstrate every day to protect this community. We're just so grateful for your service and the commitment you make to this community.
And by the way, all this connected. You know, we've invested because of the Infrastructure Act. I want to get the number right. I think it's roughly how many $1 billion? $145 billion. So for example, you know, when you increase number of jobs, that increases the number of customers. When you increase the number of customers, it increases the sense of stability. When you increase that, I mean, it just goes across the board. And so we're talking about 26,000 manufacturing jobs in Pennsylvania just since we became president. 24,000, it was down 24,000 jobs under my predecessor because we invested. We invested in the infrastructure bill. We invested in the people who, in fact, need the opportunity to have a good job. And I'll end by saying, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, but it's worth saying because it's the kind of language we understood in the neighborhoods I grew up in. My dad said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than your paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about opportunity. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, everything's going to be okay. It's interesting. One of the owners of one of the shops, I don't have permission to say the name, so I won't, but I can check if you want me to, saying that I can look at my kid now and say, it's going to be okay. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. A lot more to do. We're not finished, but it's just, this has a self-fulfilling prophecy. And again, I'll give you one last example. We talked about prescription drugs with the folks. The idea that prescription drugs and us being able to pass a requirement that Medicare has to negotiate drug prices was, you know, people say that costs money. Guess what? It saves the taxpayers billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. It not only takes the burden, for example, insulin costs $10 to make, total around $12 when you package it all. They can now only charge $35 on Medicare will only pay out. $35. It was costing $400 or more. Who was paying that? In addition to saving the taxpayer, your taxes aren't having to pay $400. And so we're going to make, by the way, we're going to go back and we're going to make sure it applies to everybody, not just seniors before it's all. Anyway, thank you. Take a few questions, I guess.
Mr. President, polling still shows that more Americans than not still disapprove of your handling of the economy. So what specifically will you do this year to turn that around and make Americans feel better about how the economy is doing?
If you notice, they're feeling much better about how the economy is doing. What we haven't done is letting them know exactly who got it changed. That's the part. That's what's happening. If you look at the consumer confidence measures, they're way up. Look at across the board. Everybody's doing better, and they believe it. They know it, and they're just beginning to sink in. One of the things that people don't know, I mean, the idea that the firefighters know, but the idea that because of what I did in terms of funding for fire departments, guess what? They got a fire school. Guess who's paying for it? Not local. The federal government's paying for it. And guess what? It's changing the dynamic. And people find somebody here who thinks there shouldn't be a fire school here. Find somebody who thinks that doesn't make sense. And it's going to save money over time because you're going to save property. You're going to save lives. You're going to save a lot of things. And so it's a matter of this. None of what we passed was able, and I knew it when I proposed it. Remember when I proposed the infrastructure bill, and I said it's going to be over $350 billion, and you all looked at me like I'd taken leave of my senses? Well, I never thought it's going to take time. It's starting to sink into people what's happening. Same way with the healthcare piece. All of a sudden, people realize, oh, my God, not only insulin going down, we're going to have 15 more drugs where now they're going to be able to negotiate the price. Prices are going to come down dramatically. And if you have a prescription drug from an American company, you give me that drug, I'll go have it. You give me that prescription, I'll have it filled in Toronto or London or Brazil. Guess what? It costs a hell of a lot less. Same company, same outfit. And the last thing is, one of the things that's going to have an impact is, and I know it doesn't matter to you guys, I'm being facetious, I shouldn't kid like that, but when you want to call and check the balance on your account, you get charged $30. Is that fair? Is that fair? These junk fees? You're going to go home for Easter, or you're going to go home for Christmas, you're going to go home for the holidays with your kid, and you find out to get your kid sitting next to you is going to cost another $200. These are junk fees. And guess what? We're getting rid of them. So people are beginning to figure out what it is that the reason why they got these opportunities, why it occurred. And that's my job and our job to make sure people know.
Mr. President, you said, to follow up on what you said a few minutes ago at the coffee shop, you said you think the Houthis are a terrorist group. I'm wondering how soon are you willing to designate them as such?
It's irrelevant whether they're designated. We've put together a group of nations that are going to say that if they continue to act and behave as they do, we'll respond.
What do you say? And a quick one on oil prices, sir. Oil hit $80 a barrel this morning after the strikes. How concerned are you about the impact the strikes will have on oil supply and prices?
I'm very concerned. That's why we got to stop it.
So what do you say to members of your own party that believe you needed congressional authorization for last night's strike?
I'm sorry?
What do you say to members of your own party who are saying you needed congressional authorization for last night's strike?
They're wrong, and I sent up this morning when the strikes occurred exactly what happened.
Are you concerned? How was your conversation with Speaker Johnson?
I was pleased with my conversation with Speaker Johnson, and apparently today he said he's sticking by the deal. No.